Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the I don't know, episode like number 6, 7, 8 of the
Six.
EmpowerUp podcast.
Six.
This is so please bear with us. This is our, we're just getting into this, and we haven't even started. Well, I haven't even started keeping track of all of the details, but we have another amazing guest, Mr. Jacob. Jacob
Hello
is
there.
someone that I have personally met through. I believe we met originally through a game jam, the San Diego Game Jam through the IGDA, and I'm just gonna let Jacob kind of introduce himself to the audience.
Yeah, hey, I'm Jacob. I'm kind of like a video game generalist. I got like my degree in music composition, but my job right now is at a company called Critivo. I'm an engineer there. And also I've done a whole bunch of like design and stuff in the past. I play a lot of D&D, all the video game staples. So I think we're here to talk about design today. I'm kind of excited for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right
Um,
on.
and just for a quick note for you guys, Jacob's a good friend of mine. We actually went to school together. We graduated with basically the same degree, worked together for a couple of years too. So, yeah, we're pretty good friends. I figured he's always talking about his game design documents and stuff like that, and I asked him to prepare some stuff ahead of time, and yeah, so I guess we can just go from there.
Right on. So really quick, Jacob, would you mind telling us about your journey? Like, out of all the things you could be doing right now, like, how'd you end up where you are today?
It's been a really wild trip, I all throughout my childhood, I was playing video games, but I was always like the music nerd, like the kid who's going to be the music professor when he grows up, aspiring to do something somewhat lame like that. But it was really important to me. And then I went to SDSU, and in high school I met some game developers and kind of discovered like, oh man, you can make video games. It's not like this super distant concept like I always imagined it. And I discovered, hey, also I kind of like programming. I'm into that. So I was one of, I guess, the founders, you would say, of a club at SDSU called the Aztec Game Lab, which Byron and I know each other through, also through our degree at SDSU.
hmm And
And
the
I'm
backdoor studio.
and the Backdoor Studio, a future job that I had. And it was just like a really cool opportunity to surround myself with people that were way better than me at the things that I wanted to do. And the same thing through the IGDA meetups and stuff like that, and through game jams in general, where I met Steve, of course. Just 4 or 5 years ago, no big or
Yeah.
something obscene like that. Yeah. Um, and so then, I kind of pivoted toward the engineer sort of position. I applied around after I got my degree, and now I'm a programmer. And in the meantime, I work on my own projects. I really like, creating like a whole cohesive game. That's what I'm most passionate about, aside from just the nitty gritty of programming or whatever.
Right on. And it seems like you've taken so many different kind of uh, pivot points in your career already. So from music to programming to design, like, could you walk us through a little bit, like, what were the challenges that you overcome, and how did you decide to make those pivots?
Yeah, originally from music to programming, I was composing music for game developers because I thought, oh, that's super cool. I want to like be somewhere near that, and so just like little amateur like high schoolers, and then I just got interested in talking to people, and I met some friends, and as I'm sure you know, when you make friends with someone, you suddenly become really passionate about like the things that they're interested in. And so I was asking all the questions, trying to learn, trying to better myself, or understand what the heck was going on behind the scenes. So that was a really kind of a gradual transition between the music and the engineering. But the design is actually, it dates back way back. When you're a kid, you're making stuff up. You're trying to invent a world to get rid of the boredom. And so that's just been kind of like coasting on for a while and then ramping up over the past few years. Like, uh, you know, I'm putting together things that I'm actually like, decently proud of. I feel like are representable. Um, and so really kind of flipping the switch from music to programming was really difficult, but from anything to design is much easier, I'm finding. Just because it's kind of in the background of your mind at all times.
So, for me personally, sound's a big part of what I do. I do some programming as well, but I'm sure like for you too, right? You'll notice the music or the sound when you're in the game, right? But you must also pay close attention to some of the design choices that they make. Can you kind of go into like some of the games where that kind of thing has stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I'm like an immense Dark Souls fanboy, and also I'm a big fan of like the Metroidvania type of things, and so I love those like sort of interconnected worlds and more than just like the placement of enemies and the placement of buildings. Uh, Design in those games is about why are things the way they are and where they are, and how do you kind of make like an existing real world of real ideas like here's a chapel, here's a dungeon or something, and then how do you incorporate that into a level that becomes playable to other people? And so yeah, like just playing game after game, I didn't expect it to be not a waste of my time. To be honest, I always thought like, oh God, I'm playing video games. What am I doing here? I'm obsessing over like some item randomizer in like Ocarina of Time or something, and
Mm,
suddenly all that like sort of clicks together. Once you get it into practice, that's definitely where I've drawn my inspiration from was all those childhood games that I was obsessed with.
that's really cool. I've noticed that for myself. It's almost like not having to do research when you've played games so much growing up. And it's such a really satisfying feeling because I don't know about you, but every once in a while, my parents, my grandmother would, say, "Hey, what are you doing just playing video games all day? You can't get paid doing that." But now it's indisputable. You can get paid. You
Well,
can do
hey,
esports, and yeah.
be responsible, kids. Do your homework, but play some video games too.
Who needs homework?
No, absolutely, yeah.
See,
I
one of the
think. Go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say,
So
I
one of the
think.
things that I absolutely love. Okay. One of the things I absolutely love is understanding that you can take the things that you're passionate about and really dissect them. And when you understand that everything that you play, everything that you're enjoying, it took people behind the scenes time and effort in order to make those things. And when you really understand like the mechanics behind it, then you can understand that, oh my goodness, like how can I take my skills and use these to actually contribute to these amazing pieces of work? And that's why I love just kind of getting your insight and your perspective, because I know you have your own personal expertise and the different flavors that you can add to these gaming experiences. And that's exactly what makes it awesome. And the cool thing is like being a gamer and investing so much time into these projects, and then to see behind the scenes, like what are the processes? Like, why is it that the designers made a decision to put this type of music or use this type of artwork? That's freaking awesome. And for me to be able to chat with you and kind of hear your feedback on this, it's super cool. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's everyone's pleasure here. We're all happy. But honestly, yeah, throughout the design experiences that I've had, on the kind of like hobbyist or non-professional level, a lot of it is just talking to the people that are going to be experiencing the design too, and figuring out like what makes them passionate. And so having people around that are like there to hear even what you're talking about, like a podcast like this or whatever,
Mm,
it's really important to being a designer, I feel like.
that's cool. And I'm kind of curious. So we talked about this briefly before we started the podcast about the RPG. But just so you know, Steve, I've always kind of wanted to work on one. So I was teaching a student that I was tutoring a couple weeks ago. And I was like, okay, this is pretty easy. I've never worked on it. But then I started realizing all of the things that you had to really consider while you were working on it. And I've started to see the value in really kind of writing down all of my ideas before I even start the coding or writing down the music. And so I'm curious kind of what steps you take or what do you do before you even get to that production process to make sure all of your ideas are in order?
Yeah, no, that's a super good question. And honestly, for me, my ideas are not always in order. That's kind of like that's a whole stage of the design process for me is ordering the ideas after I've had them. Honestly, first and foremost, it's like it's do a whole bunch of research. If you
Mhm.
want to like make a little fan version of a game, or for like one of the examples that I have up, I wrote an extension for like a Dungeons and Dragons rulebook that's just themed after the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. And so, as preparation for that, I just watched a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I looked at all the
Cool.
wiki. I tried to figure out, like, okay, what makes the existing design in this world tick? And if you don't have like a design reference, if you're just making your own thing, then you kind of have to like go out to other games, have to go out to nature or whatever, and look for inspiration in those directions. Um, so that's like just the gathering period and like creating ideas. But
Hmm.
yeah, organizing those is definitely the whole next step, which is at least how I've found it in the past is it's kind of a puzzle on its own. Like if you're designing a puzzle game, making the puzzles is a puzzle, which is like kind of mind-boggling. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's at least a good way for me to like kind of self-motivate to like, okay, I have all these weird themes. I need to figure out a way to make them mesh together well in a way that like someone who hasn't heard me ramble for 4 hours on this topic can get the gist,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the last, so like first, have your ideas, do your research, and then fit them together and make like the more consolidated design. And then even aside of that, like if you've got your chicken scratch down perfectly, it's all designed wonderfully in your mind, you still have to present that to other people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make it a palatable format for them to
Mm-hmm.
see. Um, and that was not something that I really expected at first. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of I figured that out, I guess, as part of my engineering experience at my current company, Critivo, because I was writing design document or not design documents, technical documents about the stuff that I had programmed, and I realized, wow, this if I read this, this would be nonsense. This is not good. It needs to sound good. It needs to look good. People need to want to read it. And that is a whole like kind of design challenge on its own as well, is formatting everything in a way
Mm-hmm.
that's digestible for other people.
So your experience with programming, that must really help with design then, right? I imagine it's pretty easy to come up with an idea, but understanding how that idea can be executed in like Unity or whatever, right? You already kind of have that part down.
Yeah, I mean, with programming, once you get to a certain point, you can do most things. There's all of your fundamentals are out of the way, and like you still have to research the occasional like library or something, but you get to a point where you're steady with what you know. But as far as estimating like how long that takes or like which design path should I choose to reduce development time, that's where all the like game jam experience has come into play. Definitely, I
Yeah.
feel like that's a big source of my ability to estimate my current tasks and my current designs these days is just having to crunch out something tiny in a few days. That's been really influential for me at least. Yeah.
Hmm.
But the programming background does help also kind of inform the initial design because uh, if you talk to like a really, I feel maybe an amateur game developer, someone who's just getting into it, um, they have very lofty ideas, and it's hard to tell which of those are achievable and which aren't for
Hmm.
someone who's like
Hmm.
working with a small team or something.
And then kind of a follow-up question to that, like you and I, we started out in music, right? So we've
Hmm.
always kind of had something to offer in a game jam or development setting. Um, and so how do you feel about like game design? Do you think that there's a path for game designers if they don't necessarily have a strong skill set to contribute to a project like music programming or art?
No,
Um,
absolutely. There's a spot for game designers. I've been, on a few teams that could use certainly a lot more design. I mean,
mhm,
as long as you're kind of, shooting to improve yourself as a designer and improve the ideas, then it's kind of hard to go wrong. Maybe you strike out once or twice, but certainly, having someone with the cohesive vision of things
mhm,
really helps out. As long as you're open to hearing all the opinions of the team that you're working on, whether they be just like opinions about I don't like that idea, or it's something like that's really hard to do in a short time period. So I would say, yeah, if you're a designer, even if you don't have the technical skills, um, shoot for the stars. If you're improving yourself, then people want you around.
cool, cool. Yeah, so it sounds like it's important having someone that's specifically keeping all that stuff in mind then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
cool. Oh man. Well, I know that you have some documents prepared for us. I'm
Yeah.
curious about this. I've never really seen game design documents, so do you feel comfortable sharing that with us?
Yeah, I can share absolutely. Let me share my screen here real quick. I've just thrown together like a smattering of all sorts of different things for us to look at. Just like, a big part of my design experience has been failing over and over again and wasting my time on tiny things over and over again. And eventually, through that process, nicer pieces simmer up to the top. So, like, here's, for example, a little design doc that I wrote for a card game. Um, it's pretty straightforward. I have like a list of all the cards here at the bottom, and I have a very condensed version of the rule set here in the center or on the
Hmm.
first page. This is definitely one of those examples where I realized, okay, I can design this for like a D&D session that I'm playing, and maybe like the two people that care enough to play D&D with me are gonna love it. But unless I create like this presentable format where I can share it with other people and like receive good feedback, then it doesn't really mean anything that I've created it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just added some little graphics. I am no artist by any means, but I try to improve the lesser skills that I have as well with some of these projects and get a better idea of like if I'm telling someone to make something as a designer, what do they actually have to do to get that done? And so it's tedious and it takes a lot of effort, but that's like the gist of what I wanted to show with this one. It's a so-so game,
Hmm.
even despite all the effort I put into it. It's kind of like it's like 3-player counter poker. Like you play cards to counter other cards. It's
Hmm.
very simple.
Hmm.
Here's like a game jam that I worked on. Actually, this is inspired by a game jam, but oh, if it'll load here, give me 1 second. So this game was inspired by a game jam
Hmm.
where I had an idea and it just didn't make the cutting floor. It was probably
Hmm.
not a great scope, but I still thought it was worth following my gut on this one. And
Hmm.
so I made a little minimum viable product for it. It's like a symmetry-based puzzle game with these tiles. Um, and this was certainly like a learning experience about player experience for me because this was like an ace primo genius design moment for me.
Hmm.
But when you actually showed it to people, it was not intuitive at all. It was way too
Uh,
difficult. It was not like I spent so much time making these asymmetrical patterns that would only orient themselves correctly in one direction. And at the end of the day, it was an idea that I just had to let go. That was a pretty big, it was an important moment for me to learn.
hmm. Hmm.
So
So
yeah,
what?
I made 3 of these puzzles.
So
Yeah,
what do
yeah, go
you
ahead.
so what do you do? Like, let's say you're starting the development process or the design process. Do you try to get feedback often to see if it's intuitive, or do you like set milestones to check, okay, does it work at this point, or does that make any sense?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's what I learned from this one too. Is I need to get feedback early and take the feedback because this one, as I said, it didn't make the cutting block at the game jam,
Hmm.
and that was for a reason. As I discovered, it took me all this time to actually implement it and create all of the puzzles for it in order to understand that what those people were saying was correct.
Hmm.
Um, and so I try and get feedback along the way. Um, just because, kind of like as an aside, one of my like motivating factors is I always, I'm just enthused by impressing people.
Mm.
That's like it's just something that, and so I do have that tendency to kind of like hold the project back and say to myself, oh no, I want to show it when it's done, and then people will see it and they'll be shocked and it'll have the biggest wow factor. But at the end of the day, review in like incremental stages throughout is really useful because you can get sidetracked into kind of like a misread design,
Mm.
or at least that's been my experience, where you have a core idea and it just doesn't connect at all,
Hmm.
and then you've built everything up around it, and you can be a really good designer for the last like 90% of
Hmm.
that design
Hmm.
process, but the first 10% was misaligned, and then it all crumbles down.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
Yeah. So those first ideas definitely are big. I mean, you were talking about an RPG working on that definitely like the gameplay for those sorts of genres is pretty cemented if you're talking about like a turn-based type thing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So that's nice. You have
Mhm.
a good building block to work off of and something that's like in the mind of the player already.
Mhm.
But certainly for that sort of thing, you have to have the really good narrative building blocks too.
Mhm.
Um,
And
but yeah,
so,
that was yeah.
okay, so in regards to that, then, like, let's say you have a core idea, people are really enjoying your prototype. Like, but let's say you're like in an interview, right? Because our core audience is people maybe in college, kind of recently out, and they're looking for jobs, and they
Mhm.
don't have and their interviewer is gonna skim over this in like 6 seconds. And I'm sure you can speak to this, Steve, right? Since you're a recruiter now, right? So how do you whittle down your 10-page design document and your like 5-minute gameplay video into like an elevator pitch that makes sense for the person that's interviewing you? Like, let's say it's HR,
Uh-huh.
before you get to the people who understand design.
No, yeah, maybe Steve can give me some advice too here. We'll see. That's actually such a good segue into my next thing, which is this extension for the D&D Player's Handbook that's
Hmm.
all like Avatar themed. And this thing is like a beast. It's pages and pages, and I would never for the life of me expect an interviewer to actually read through this nonsense. Like it's absurd. And in addition to that, of course I got to follow up with the monster manual, which is, let me see here, like 70 pages or something. It's not even loading all the way. And this is even despite this though, I think that at least for these like sort of portfolio examples, I would definitely say that showing that you are putting the effort in
Hmm.
um, is in itself sort of a distilled statement. So they don't have to read through every aspect and like figure out if your design was actually good. So long as they can see in your presentation and the quantity of work that like for some of your portfolio pieces at least, not all of them, that you're really you're thinking a lot about what's going on. Then the flip side is you want to have a few of those pieces that they are really approachable to them, and so that's why having like some little sort of game jam sort of things, or here's a like Mario Maker level that I made.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I made this little viewer by splicing together all of the individual frames from the level builder. It was a hassle, but
How long did that take you?
don't even ask. Yeah. But I made some, fancy little graphics to show the route that the player might take through. And even if you don't care about design at all, you can look at this and say, "Oh man, this is something that they've thought a lot about, and they've got a very concrete, sort of example to work off of there." Um, and so, like, if I were like going to be applying around for a design position, then I would probably lean on a few of these smaller ones uh, that they actually can double check the design on, double check the feel on, and then have some backups of just the larger scope projects.
Hmm. Awesome.
Dude, that is freaking awesome. So like one of the things that I absolutely love about this is that you are coming from the perspective of that you need to communicate your value to people that may not necessarily know like what does it take to be a good designer. And I love like the fact that you put something like this together. It really makes it easy for someone like me who doesn't have any design experience at all. It allows me to understand that you did put a lot of thought into this. And one of the things that you touched on before was being able to communicate this to somebody that doesn't have the background or the technical understanding of what's going on. This is one of the things that you can do that will really help give you a leg up on other people when they're applying for a job. And what I mean by that is a lot of times recruiters, when they're looking at a like a resume, one of the challenges is that they can't really see how skilled you are as a designer if all they're looking at is bullet points on a resume. The best thing that can be done is that they look at like what's the job experience, right? And the thing that a recruiter will look at is like, okay, well, have they done this type of work before for like a big company? So something that sticks out a lot is big video game, names like PlayStation or Xbox or Square Enix or stuff like that. So that's something where a recruiter can see those experiences. Oh, this person's been a designer at Square Enix for 3+ years. He must know something for him to survive there. So the challenge for somebody that doesn't have that type of company on their resume is like to show their actual competence and give examples of that. And a great way to do that is to be on a place like LinkedIn. So for example, if you took this video that you're showing and you posted this on LinkedIn and said, hey, this is my game design experience. This is what I was able to do. I created this in Mario Maker, and this was the mindset that I had creating this entire project. This is why I decided to, have these different branches that the player could take, and why that would be a fun experience for them. And then as you explain these things on like LinkedIn posts, that is giving people insight into, wow, Jacob really is a good designer, right? I can understand that it's not just a bullet point on his resume that says he's a designer. It's like, oh my goodness, like this is the examples, right?
No, that's something.
The cool thing is,
go ahead.
oh, look, I mean, that's one of those things that you can do on LinkedIn. And the cool thing is, like, the audience can participate in this journey for you. So, for example, if you're going to say, I'm going to create a level in Mario Maker over the next month, and I'm going to start from scratch, you could start posting about that like on day one and just talk about your journey and the challenges that you're overcoming and why you're making certain decisions. And then at the end of that month, you'll have a finished product. And the cool thing is you're programming your audience into to understanding who you are as a person. One, that you're self-motivated. Like nobody's forcing you to do this. And that's one of the things that companies look for is like who's self-driven, right? That's one of those things you always see on a job description. So this is you proving without a doubt that you've got that. Two is you're allowing the audience to kind of be emotionally involved in your journey. And in my opinion, I think people love to be a part of somebody else's kind of success and kind of contribute to that. So if I were to see you post something like this on LinkedIn, I would love to like and comment on it because I can see through your eyes the journey. It's kind of like a reality show, and I want to be I want to be part of the hero's journey, and you are the hero in the story. And to see like your progress and what are the challenges that you're able to overcome, it's that's something that I would love to do. And the cool thing is, like, as I participate in your journey, if I like and comment, people from my network will see your work, and that's something that gives you a lot more exposure than you just kind of having to go out and search from people on your own. You know what I mean? Kind of the difference between fishing and hunting is like, as you post this stuff online, you're attracting people to your journey instead of you having to go out and trying to force relationships and force connections just through your own individual like efforts. You know what I mean? So to see something like this, like, it's cool for me to see this right now, awesome. But like there's so many other people that would love to see it as well. And that's why I encourage you, if you haven't put something like this on LinkedIn yet, to like start right now.
Yeah, no, self-marketing that's something that I found to be so hard because I'm just so focused on, making games and trying to impress the people that are they're close enough to me to care about the games already that, I'm not even thinking about like the LinkedIn posts I could be making, the journey I could be telling. That's got to be like the next layer of the design experience is telling your story professionally, or like in a professional manner to anyone that could see it, not just the people that you're applying for. That's really smart. Yeah, I mean, I could probably use a few more LinkedIn posts. You're right.
You know what'll really help too? Telling everyone you were on the EmpowerUp podcast goes a long way.
Oh yeah, is there a lot of cred? Well, I'm still waiting for my promotional shirt. If you guys don't have
it's in the mail. It's coming in the mail.
Good. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
mind? I
Yeah,
mean,
and
it's a little bit of a tangent, but do you mind if I ask? How's the podcast been going so far? How have the people you brought on been doing? How are you? Are you getting tired of each other yet? You two?
I personally absolutely love these conversations. And the cool thing is, this is like a natural thing for me and Byron because we've been having these conversations for years already. And I think we came to the epiphany that, hey, these conversations can be very valuable for other people. So why would we want to just keep this information to ourselves? I mean, just like you as a designer, like you've got so much value from your experience, right? And
Yeah.
you having this information all in your head, that's great. But like, who are the people out in the world that could be inspired by your journey? And how can that be an asset to the video game development world in general, right? So, like, just understanding the value that you have and then saying, you know what, I can really make an impact and just putting it out in the world, that's one of those things that can help get more attention to you in general. Because there's a saying that goes, you will get everything you want in life if you help enough people get what they want, right? And when you come from that mindset, it's karma, right? The more good that you spread out into the world, the more will naturally just come back to you in general. So that's one of the reasons why I want to do this, not just because it's great information for me, but also understanding that this can help you in your career. And who knows how this one moment here can make an impact that will, provide value years down the line, right? Who knows, maybe there's going to be a game designer that listens to this and then they end up having their own studio in 5 years and they're like, oh, I remember Jacob from this podcast. I wonder what he's up to, right? But you don't know how the ripples will impact people in the future. So it's
Yeah,
just like,
it is so cool that we have the opportunity to share our experiences in this way. I feel like there's so many industries in the past, creative and uncreative, where there's just been, this blank wall, this opaque wall that you can't
Mm.
see through. It feels like you're pushing through to an impossible goal. And now to hear all these people, like with, the advent of technology and just like different societal norms with like influencers or whatever, um, to see people sharing like their moment to moment as a professional, it's really cool. And like having people that are smart enough to share those sorts of stories and to try to collect them or procure them, like podcast hosts, that's a really valuable thing. I just think for art in general, even aside from just the games industry, that's so cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And specifically like with this design, right, that you have here, like I feel like game design in some disciplines can be super abstract when you're thinking about, okay, how do I improve myself or how do I improve my chances of visibility or getting hired or getting interviews, right? So you posting this and allowing us to share this on the podcast for people to watch on Twitch is a perfect example of how we can really spread this information and give someone like an actual like concrete idea of how to move forward because this is awesome. I had no idea that
Thank
you
you.
took the time to do stuff like this, but it's evident to me that why you've seen so much success just by looking at this one picture.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I put a lot of elbow grease into this one. It's true, and it looks really flashy. But
Yeah. Well, look,
just
I've
if
known you for years, so this is just kind of a culmination, like it's obvious, putting in the work and seeing this is an obvious example of that, though, for sure.
if there are any amateur designers or something watching that see this and think like, oh man, I'm not a programmer. I don't set up all this stuff or whatever. Or like he spent a whole bunch of time on this. It's already done. It feels abstract. Like, and here's just in the background when we talk. Here's like an example of playing through like the 100%
Hmm.
of this level. Uh, honestly, there's so many things that I did wrong in this level that in hindsight are kind of painful to me. Just the pacing and the progression is not intuitive to the player, and so I'm presenting it. I feel better than I've designed it, if
Mm.
that's even
Hey,
possible to do.
that gets past the screening though in an interview. That's
Yeah, sometimes and so that's really it. you know, there's so much for me still to learn and still to achieve. especially the loading of this video. That's crucial to me.
That's awesome though, man. This is so cool. Like, see this kind of stuff because I remember the last time you did this. So for reference for the guys watching or for listening, um, Jacob and I we went to San Diego State and we used to put on this concert every year called the Electronic Music Marathon. And I remember going to one of them and seeing Jacob like most people just ripped off a video from YouTube and then put music to it. But Jacob just literally had a trailer for a game he was working on. It has the music to go along with it. And I was like, okay, that's real. That's original. That's really cool.
And that was one of those cases of, I'm learning and I'm completing my assignments on time, but at the end of the day, I'm just trying to do the things that I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
And I before like if you had asked me about design like 3 years ago or something, I would say, oh yeah, all the time I've spent doing that has been a tremendous waste. There's not much to show for it. And that was like, several years into my like informal sort of design education over the years. But now I have some decently polished stuff to show. I've got I feel like it's getting at least recognized here on the podcast, recognized by my friends, like, hey, this guy, he's really he's putting in the effort. So um finding those passions and then pursuing them, and just kind of like trying to incorporate them into the things that you need to do anyway. Like, okay, if I'm going to be a 2D artist, then I've got to practice my form drawing or whatever. So how about I create a character for a video game instead of just drawing a random painting of someone out in the wild. Trying to sculpt those side projects that you have to do along the way into things that benefit you in the things that you want to achieve is, I think, really important.
Yeah, I like that. And then I've noticed like a core theme from the projects that you've worked on is that you didn't always, and I know we from us talking before, talking in previous conversations, you don't always enjoy every aspect of what you're working on, but you're always willing to put in the work on even the art, right? I'm sure music and the programming, that might be something that you're more willing to work on than going into whatever you use to do your art. So can you talk about like
Yeah.
yeah, so like what are some of the other things like do you sketch stuff out or is it just like using Photoshop or like GIMP or something or um
For the 2D art stuff, that is something that I will quite admittedly state. Don't worry, the level's almost over. I'll switch tabs in a second. Um, I will quite admittedly state I have despised every second of that. And even some game jams, which are like the epitome of what I want to do with my life, I have just not enjoed. It happens, it happens. But
but I thought you
just kind
always
of
enjoy doing everything creative though.
nope, not at all. Not at all. I'm sure you can attest, Byron. There's some stuff that you just kind of have to eat your way through. But and I guess this is more about me being a generalist than a designer. But that's certainly it's given me perspective on the different requirements that go into making a game entirely. Like for example, these sketches here for the cards of this game.
Hmm.
I spent a whole bunch of time like researching, like, okay, I can't draw people. I'm not an artist. I can come up with weird concepts though, and I can make all of the cards of a certain type start with the same letter or something, And so I just just kind of like learning to trust that process of, okay, well, I'll just research pictures of like paintings of medieval people or whatever, and then I'll trace those and I'll see what goes from there, and then I'll like I had the idea to incorporate like these sort of currencies of the game, being like weapons, these kind of strange, surreal faces, and these crests into the art themselves, and kind of like modify, and just making these little improvements. Like, okay, it's still bad. I know it's bad, but I'm gonna move forward anyway and try and like add the next layer of polish, and eventually something decent comes out, or decent enough to show as like a side project on your portfolio. Um, and so just suffering through those unfortunate moments in like the things that I really love to do, like music, and the things that I am not a huge fan of, like 2D art, um, that has been a really important skill that I've had to learn, I think. I don't know, have
Cool.
you done much suffering, Steve or Byron? How's the process been for you to get where you are?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I can't remember if I told you about the mobile game that I launched in the Play Store last at the end of last year.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, that was not fun. That was lots of GIMP, lots of making sure that the artwork makes sense, making sure that I can like duplicate the image and make sure it fits on both ends, making sure that there's a lot of variety in the level. Like after the core gameplay and the music and stuff was done, it was just totally like super tedious. Just, but it had to be done. Like it was like that last 10% or whatever, to polish up the game.
Mhm. No, yeah. How about like
Mhm.
career-wise? Is there or Steve, are you gonna say something?
For me, like the thing is, I have like zero ability when it comes to the actual art of making video games. I'm not a programmer, I'm not a designer, I'm not an artist. But the value that I can add to a game development team is that I can see where everybody's expertise is, and I understand the value of allowing those people to focus on the things that they're strong at. So helping a programmer focus most of their time on programming and what are the things that I can do that can allow them to focus like that. And it's things like when we were at a game jam, I could help find what are the best rooms in order to so that our team could focus without being distracted.
Oh, like
What are things that I
physical
could do?
rooms? Oh,
Yeah, like physical rooms
yeah, that's
or like what does it take to make sure that everybody's fed and making sure everybody's on the same page with regards to break times and making sure that we're all coordinated. Those are all things where I can add value to a team where I'm not like necessarily hands-on on the development, but I'm helping the team operate better as a whole instead of everybody just kind of going off and doing their own thing. And that's what I understand where I can add value. So that's how I built my entire 15 plus year career in video games, is not focusing on the things that I can't do, but just understanding what can I do and how can that be a positive benefit to the people that I'm interacting with, if that
it
makes sense.
sounds a lot like you're a designer of people here. You're designer of companies, you know? That's what I'm getting from this. That's my takeaway. Because you're trying to figure out, just like I was saying earlier, like we have the ideas and now we need to combine them together, and that's a puzzle of its own. And the types of things that you're talking about, like I would never to think about what sort of room is the team going to be working in. That surely must come from experience, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. And I know for myself
And
personally. Oh, sorry, Steve.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the design process for me is, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of a drag. I know that you need to plan stuff out in the beginning. I'm the kind of person where I have certain things I like designing, but in terms of like game development, yeah, it's a little bit tedious to me, but I'm starting to understand more and more, especially talking to you and talking to my designer friends, just the importance of making sure you have some of these core mechanics planned out before you just start going in and coding stuff or doing whatever else you want to do. So it's something I'm starting to enjoy a lot more. I just picked up a book, I can't remember the name of it, but reading more about storytelling and design and stuff like that.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like that's one of my current like that's kind of something I'm lacking is I haven't spoken to a lot of designers, you know? I've talked to them in passing and I've had like meetings, but I haven't like sat down and designed some stuff collaboratively with people in quite some time. And so that's certainly yeah, just like
Let's
that's
do
something
it.
I could work on.
Let's
Yeah,
do it,
that's
Jacob.
what I should do. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things that about going back to posting your stuff on LinkedIn is that you will attract the attention of people that are kind of like in the same mindset. So you're showing other designers out in the world, hey, this is what you're doing. And then you're giving other designers the opportunity to give you feedback and have like a conversation about, oh, why would they make different decisions? And how did they come across these same problems that you're coming across? And then how did they actually implement it into the games that they make? Because like on a platform like LinkedIn, you can connect with game designers from all over the world, and just to get their feedback, like, and designers from the games that you absolutely have played and loved, and just to be able to have that interaction with them, like you can speak intelligently about what games that you've played and give feedback and give honest like criticism. And that's the cool thing, is like just bouncing ideas and having access to people all across the world. And you started off just with you posting, hey, this is what I'm working on, give it out to the world, and then who knows how it's gonna pay off in the future.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who can, if you can find those communities, I know IGDA or Game Jams, there are all sorts of channels. If you just want to be an artist, you just want to be a designer or something, those sorts of communities are so awesome. And anytime I can find one, it's like, it's a little treasure that I've discovered. And to see like that now, LinkedIn, it's just accessible to everyone.
Hmm.
That's the way to go. Talk to people.
Yeah, for sure. I think another good one too is itch.io, because I know right now we're probably kind of in the tail end of COVID, so stuff is kind of still closed, maybe not full capacity. So if you don't feel comfortable going in person to those events or conferences, I believe itch.io has a Discord server that you can also go to, and they hold game jams, I believe, every week. So that's probably another good way of getting in touch with other developers and other creatives in the industry.
Definitely, yeah.
And a side note is that you can use LinkedIn. You can literally do searches on designers in throughout the world, and you can um, very effectively target people that you want to get in touch with.
Hmm.
Another thing that you can do is look at the credits of your favorite games and use that as an opportunity to find people's names and find and connect with them on LinkedIn. So
That's
just
such a
one of
good
those
idea.
things, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Like like they literally give you a list of all of the people that worked on the game, right?
To cheat sheet, yeah. I mean, geez.
It's so cool. It's so simple too. Like I've noticed on LinkedIn, it's kind of a numbers game in the sense that no one really cares whether they really know you for as on LinkedIn. I've noticed people are really willing to accept your request on there a lot easier than like let's say Instagram or Facebook, right? That's been my experience. I actually got my current position because I reached out to someone. I wasn't connected to them. They accepted my request. I said, "Hey, I love what you guys are doing. I'd love to get in touch." And then that's literally how we got the ball rolling for how I got the job.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Wow, yeah, talk about the meeting of like-minded people. You're right, Steve. Here's case in point right here.
And that's one of the things that I would like to kind of point out a little bit on LinkedIn is just using that as an opportunity to not just find the job, but also how to add value to other people's careers. Because you kind of have to think about this as every interaction that you have, you're already interviewing with them. And you have to understand like what's the impact that you're having with every single person that you come across. And I love to give this example that everybody has people in their life that only comes to them when they want something, right? They only, hey Jacob, would you mind helping me out? Can I borrow this? Can you help me out with this game that I'm making? And when that's the type of interaction that you have, it's got kind of a negative connotation to it. So what you can do is just reverse engineer that and say, well, if I want to set a good example for myself, I can reach out to people and genuinely be of service. Like, how can I help you out? And it doesn't necessarily have to do with what your profession is. It can just be, how are you being a genuinely good human being? Like, if you know an amazing sound designer and you see a post for somebody that's looking for a sound designer, you can make that connection, right? Just say, hey, I know somebody who I think would be great for this role. And then you make that connection. And then you're already like, you didn't do the work yourself, but you're just recommending somebody who you think could, right? And that's the type of like mentality where you're showing that, hey, I'm just here to help, right? You may not be making any money off of that connection. You're just being a good person, right?
And it's
And
yeah,
that's the type of thing for LinkedIn. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's that type of it's exactly that sort of thing where, if adopted by so many people, and I think this is why a reason that it's one reason that you don't see that many jerks in the gaming industry. I mean, there are some, but not too many, compared to some industries. It's because if all of these people are individually doing that, then it just makes this really positive, like community industry. And that's great advice. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I love that because I know some other corners of entertainment. It's not kind of the same. Like music entertainment is kind of cutthroat compared to like game
Music
development.
can be brutal. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
But see, I think this is one of those things where understanding the importance of every interaction that you have is vital because your reputation gets around. And something that I've noticed about the video game industry is that it's a pretty small community. Like I've seen people about to get hired on, but they talk with one of the team members that they have and say, "Hey, you worked with this guy at a previous company. We're thinking about hiring him. Should we bring him in?" And they're like, "No, like he was completely toxic to the team. And if you want to make everybody else here miserable, we should probably stay away from that person." And
Yeah,
that's just one of
exactly.
those things where you have to keep that in mind. And I mean that's part of just understanding the game of working professionally in video games.
And even aside from, yeah, just getting jobs or giving jobs, you can end up in a situation where you're working with people that you might have like pissed off in the past if you're a jerk. There's I've certainly discovered like after someone's been hired, oh, it's that John. I knew him from like way back in, I don't know, 2012 or whatever. Let's see. Let me rack my mind. Like, what was our last interaction? I hope it was good.
It was that Jacob.
That's
Yeah, I
not the
remember that
bad
guy.
situation you want to be in. That's and and there's a lot of cross contamination too. Your company might just do like a collaboration or hire out from a different company. And if you're a bad representative for your company, for yourself, then you're not helping anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like you see, like they call them the fanboys, right? Xbox and Sony, right? Those people are the fans are like, oh man, I hate Xbox. Oh man, I hate PlayStation. The reality is the people that are making those consoles and making those games probably hang out outside of work.
Almost certainly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, because making the games, we understand how hard it is to get everybody on the same page and to make something of, a high quality standard. And we're, for the most part, just not it's one of those things where it we understand because it's like a brotherhood, because of the community, because we're making the same sacrifices and pouring so many hours of our lives into making these games that a lot of that Xbox versus PlayStation stuff is it's just very trivial. So yeah, you're absolutely right with that.
Cool. Well, unfortunately, we're almost at the hour already, if you can believe it.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. That's what I love about these conversations. That's why it just makes so much sense for me and Steve to do these live streams, right? Um, so are there any like parting words? We'll start with Jacob. Are there any parting words or advice you'd like to give to people who are starting out in design or maybe they're considering design?
Mhm. Well, first, thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been an awesome conversation. Happy to be here. And I guess just if anyone is looking for advice, then I would say one of the hardest things that's carried me through the design stuff that I've done in the past is just figuring out ways to stay motivated. Whether that means I need to just like completely unplug for a day and like recharge, or if I need to remove myself from the situation and like go to a park and do sketches there or something, or talk to people and trying to find energy from them. If I didn't stay motivated, then I wouldn't have gotten to those second layers of polish that I'm talking about, and I would just be left with the base layer, which is like one kind of half-finished asset or something, which never feels good. And there are enough of those half-finished assets that I have lying around because I have lost motivation on some projects, certainly. But just figuring out ways to, learning yourself to ways to make yourself productive is really important to
Hmm.
me.
Cool. Cool. What about you, Steve? Any parting words or advice?
One, thank you, Jacob, so much for taking time out of your day to have this chat with us. Like, the reason why I love having you on this is because you are a cool dude, right? That was one of those things that through our years of experience that I love having these chats, and that's why I want to chat with you right here, because I know that like I'm being part of your journey and just understanding that I have an opportunity to make a positive impact in your career. That's something that I absolutely love. So thank you so much for just taking this time and for having these conversations throughout these years.
We're just three cool dudes chatting here. That's what's going on, you know?
Yeah. And yeah. Thanks, Jacob. And like seriously, thank you for a lot of stuff, honestly, because you started the club, and that really is what kept me engaged in college. And
Yeah.
then we've been working together for so long. I think I told you the other day, there was a point where I considered dropping out, but the club really was something I looked forward to every week. Then you
Yeah.
introduced me to Steve, and that really just kind of got the ball rolling from there.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just me with the club, you know, there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a whole group of people, you know,
Of course, of course.
finding an existing niche
But
and
you were the most important person in the club.
okay.
You could tell Barry I said that too.
Well, no, I'm super glad to have helped you in any way if I have, you know. I feel like I was just doing, you know, normal college things, trying to reach out to people, trying to make friends and stuff, and so I'm happy that things have ended out how they have. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, guys. Well, that concludes this episode. I believe it's episode 6 of the EmpowerUp podcast. Um, so yeah, thanks for listening.
All right.